everybody. Welcome to the IBJ podcast. We have another special guest today. As always, we have Andre Jimenez in the building. We're going to speak more about him and many more. But before we get into that, we're going to get into the IBJ mission. The purpose of the Institute of Black Justice is to relentlessly pursue equity and justice for all. The IBJ mission is threefold: to be an advocate for fairness and equity, to be an accelerator to the justice system's transformation, and to be an accomplice to the credible social justice influencers and the communities they serve. Welcome, Andre. Thank you for joining us today. We will be talking about Andre Jimenez himself, who he is. We will be talking about the upcoming Freedom Summer Symposium, June 22nd, and we'll also be talking about the 2024 Mini Design Challenge. To say a little bit about Andre and who he is, he recently graduated from Princeton University, earning a master's in public affairs, also earning his BA in law and policy at the University of Washington. And in his spare time, Andre enjoys spending time with his wife, Jasmine, and their 4 girls. Welcome, listeners. Welcome, our special guests. I hope you've been enjoying the sunshine recently. Hello, Andre. Can you please introduce yourself to everybody listening and who may not be familiar with you?
Of course. Thank you so much, Isaiah. It's so great to be back on the Black Row podcast and to be interacting with the Institute for Black Justice. I'm Andre Jimenez. As has been noted, I just recently graduated from Princeton. But before that, I was born and raised in Tacoma, have lived here my whole life, graduated from the University of Washington, Tacoma. It's where I started my family and where I started my career in state and local government. I believe that the best way to serve people is to be able to see a need, to hear people's problems, and to be able to directly implement solutions. And I've just always found a direct calling and purpose in local government, because I think at the local level, you have the deepest and closest connection to people. And so I started doing this work in Tacoma, and that's how I got introduced to Carol and IBJ. I think most relevant part of my bio in this conversation is that I was a part of the first leadership cohort with IBJ before it was ACES. Had the opportunity to, at the second Freedom Summer Symposium, serve as a coach, and I'm excited to be back in this role, helping guide the design challenge again. I've had the opportunity to, work across the country in Chicago and Philadelphia, working at local government, specifically on public safety and on ways that we can create better systems and keep people out of the justice system. And if they interact with the justice system, making sure that they're whole when they return and can live successful lives. And so excited to talk more about the Freedom Summer Symposium and this work, and excited to engage with this group again.
Thank you so much, Andre. I just want to say it means a lot to me, like meeting people like you, like yourself, because I feel like I want to be where you're at in my future. Being able to work on a local level, I think is really cool. And I'm somebody who loves transformational change. I feel like you're able to implement that in the work that you've been doing. So I just want to thank you so much for that. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about the Freedom Summer Symposium, how you're feeling, what you're excited about?
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm most excited about our keynote speaker. We're going to be having Michelle Alexander come and speak at the Freedom Summer Symposium. And yeah, I think that it's going to be an amazing time. I think Freedom Summer Symposium in general is a really great time, having the community come together. You have young people, you have elders coming in one space and seeking solutions to community problems and community issues that we all see and that we all deal with. And it's always a special time, and I'm really excited to be back in Tacoma doing the good work.
Oh, you mentioned Michelle Alexander. Now, I feel like I've heard that name before in school. I'm pretty sure she got a book. Would you be able to tell us more about Michelle and who she is and what she means to you as well?
For sure. So Michelle Alexander is an American writer, attorney, and civil rights activist. And she's probably best known for her 2010 book, The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. And this book is exceptionally important to me. I am going to be starting law school in the fall, and I can draw a direct connection to why I'm going to law school to this book. I read this book in my junior year of undergrad, And especially being the son of two formerly incarcerated parents and my mother dealing with substance abuse for most of my childhood, Michelle's book really connected a lot of the pieces and connected the work that I wanted to do with the lived experience that I had gone through with my mother, and really helped put the pieces together for me and helped me set me on this path of changing these systems that were designed to harm people that look like us, that are from communities that we're from. And so I'm really excited for people that don't know who Michelle Alexander is. I think that it's going to be an amazing experience for them to be introduced to her. And I think for those of us who know and respect and revere her work, it's going to be the perfect way to kick off the Freedom Summer Symposium. And since 2018, she's been an opinion columnist for the New York Times and spoken in a lot of places, but I think bringing her to Tacoma is going to be a transformational experience for all.
Thank you so much. You make it's such a powerful way that you like portray like what she does or how important she is. I'm I'm excited to see where you go as far as your next steps, and congratulations on law school. So I just want to say that, and yeah, we all give you your flowers here at IBJ, and thank you. I mean, anybody who's listening, Andre Jimenez was a huge part and actually one of the key cultivators of ACEs and like it being a thing right now. So you guys are getting a lot to watch right now, partly because of Andre. So man, I'm thankful I got a job right now, you know, since I'm just kidding. But on to the next thing, right. The design, oh wait, no. We have great speakers that we're going to be having at the Freedom Summer Symposium. We're also going to be having Dr. Gilda Shepherd, Christina Blocker. We're going to have Jonathan Jackson, Faraji Bakati, excuse me if I mispronounced the name, but he specializes with yoga behind bars. And he will be our afternoon keynote speaker, along with many other talented performers. We really had an emphasis on bringing in people from the Tacoma space, as many people as we could, especially young voices, whether they be rappers or R&B singers, people who do spoken word poetry, and like having different, because we feel that like for transformational change, you need different perspectives. So we also brought in Faraji, right? And Faraji, I love his approach on healing the body through yoga, but also like bridging that gap that many colored people have in our society of like that body trauma with the mind trauma and stuff like that. It's all interconnected. I feel like he's going to be a great person for anybody to come and experience as well. So yeah, next is the next thing he was also formerly incarcerated. And that's a huge point of like the whole thing we're talking about at the Freedom Summer Symposium. So that gives us fresh perspective on what it means to be incarcerated, but also to heal yourself from that and come and transform your community and how he is doing. The design challenge for young adults is also something that's coming up. And the theme from the Freedom Summer Symposium this year is Fresh Out, the impact of the punishment culture on the Black family's well-being. Would you be able to talk a little bit about that, Andre?
For sure. You know, when I first heard the theme for this year, I thought it was the perfect theme at the perfect time when we're talking about the impact of punishment culture on Black family well-being. I think that we're at a space and time where so much Black culture and the Black family is under attack. There's this sense that our history doesn't matter, that Black knowledge is not important, that, we just had Representative Byron Donalds talking about how the Black family was so much stronger under the Jim Crow era, and he's a Black Republican representative. And I think that there are a lot of people who have this kind of fantasized view of what the Black family was before. And I think that certainly mass incarceration, the war on drugs, and several other systems have conspired to break apart the Black family. And so I think that it's important that we're taking this time as both the young generation and the elders to come together and figure out how we repair these harms and how we move forward and create solutions that work for us and are made by us. And so the elders were asked a question, and they were asked, how might an abolitionist mindset heal the harms of punishment culture? So I guess my question to you would be, what does an abolitionist mindset mean, or what does it mean to you, Isaiah?
Right. I love that. For one, I feel like with the Freedom Summer Symposium and the work we do, we're able to redefine what the Black family means in terms of strength as well. And I feel like whenever we look at not just the far right, but anybody who's against the liberation of Black people, that same narrative does coming up, tokenizing different versions of Black people in the past that were compliant, that really never existed. I mean, I understand like that remark you're mentioning by that representative, why they use him in the first place, because he's a Black face and a Black person saying that, and the impact that that can have. We can also be looking at our judicial branch and the Black person on there as well. I know there's stuff that comes up all the time with that. So I appreciate that example. But as far as the abolitionist mindset, what does that mean to me? I feel like a lot of times people hear abolition and they think tearing down and then nothing after. But I think what they forget is like when the whole purpose of us abolishing systems is to rebuild them in the way they should have been built in the first place. They always say that systems aren't like broken or anything. They're working exactly how they were supposed to work. And so that's exactly why they need to be abolished and rebuilt with the people at the most marginalized, in the most marginalized positions in society. I've heard many times before, I know Kimberly Crenshaw mentioned something like, you know, when we focus on the most marginalized identities, there's an effervescence that happens and everybody benefits, right? Um, yeah. And so I guess to break it down even further, an abolitionist mindset seeks to address and heal the harms of punishment culture by fundamentally rethinking like the way that society handles crime, right? Harm and justice. The aim of the approach is to transform systems that rely on punishment and incarceration, and prioritize healing. Like we want to heal. It's not just about changing the systems. If we're not doing something that's self-sustaining to people, we're just breaking something down just to cause more harm. And so accountability is a huge means of this as well, and centering the community as well. One thing we take on here at ACES is human-centered design. So I feel that whatever we abolish, the same way I was mentioning earlier, we need to center humans and the need to make sure that everybody is taken care of within society. Um, so I just asked, as far as abolition mindset, what does that mean to you? How would you break it down for yourself, and why do you think it's important?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that you just said. I personally, when I first was learning about abolition, had a lot of preconceived notions. I think that the definition of abolition has been um, co-opted a lot, especially in the last 20, 30 years. But to me, abolition is exactly what you said. You know, it's seeking to address and heal the harms of these systems that are not broken, but are working as they were designed. And to me, abolition is less about breaking down and tearing down systems as it is about allowing ourselves to think and intentionally design systems that work for us. And I think that that's the trap that a lot of people try to get and put abolitionists into this box of, oh, you just want to get rid of XYZ. Oh, you just want to break down this system. Or what would you do if you weren't able to call the police? What would you do if your brother or sister were harmed? And that's really not the aim and goal of abolition, both at its core and historically. It's been about allowing ourselves to think about and really interrogate these systems that we all are a part of. And how do we redesign them to make them work better for all of us? And like you said, when we center the people who are harmed the most, that helps everybody. And you know, I think you mentioned Kimberly Crenshaw, a great example, you know, how she built kind of the theory of intersectionality, you know, thinking about who's most harmed by these systems. It's often the people who sit at the intersections of race, gender, class, sexual orientation, and so many other both protected and unprotected classes of people. And so I'm really excited with the question that the elders have posed to us. And I also know that the young adults were asked a question, and they were asked, how might we hold people accountable when they violate a community standard without isolating and separating them from their families and the communities that they come back to? And I think that's a really important distinction, and also why I love the format of the Freedom Summer Symposium, where we have the elders who can provide us with the wisdom and knowledge and perspective. But then you also have young people, in real time thinking about how do we take that wisdom and how do we take the experiences that we're living out each day and bring those together to actually solve our community's problems. And so I'm really excited about the designers that we have this year. I've had an opportunity to interact with several of them, and they're incredibly bright. They're incredibly committed to this work. Like Isaiah mentioned, they're using this human-centered design model, thinking about the people who are actually going through these systems. Oftentimes we talk about these systems as if there aren't people every day who are being churned and spit out from these systems. And I really appreciate the approach that the ACEs cohort is taking to not just think about the systems, but think about the people going through the systems and the outcomes that these systems are producing.
Thank you so much. One thing you mentioned that I want to talk more about, you mentioned the fact of elders and young people coming together. I wanted to ask you the question, why is that so special? And how do you feel that IBJ and ACEs are like either effectively or like if you do feel like they're effectively bridging that gap, and how do you feel like that's going to help us push forward in these issues that we're focusing on?
Yeah, well, I think, as you said previously, I think that these issues affect all of us, and that when we solve these issues, we're all better for it. I think oftentimes, um, I think in a lot of times in spaces, for whatever reason, there's this disconnect between the older generation and a younger generation. And I think oftentimes we as young people lose out on the wisdom and lived experience and really kind of like the historical arc that our elders bring to us. And there are just not a lot of spaces where you intentionally have both groups together working towards the same goal at the same time. And so that's why always Freedom Summer Symposium has been special to me, because it's an organic and authentic way to both hear the experience, and then they get to watch us create those solutions in real time and provide us real-time feedback. I think oftentimes a lot of that feedback comes to us and we feel it as criticism, where as in the Freedom Summer Symposium, we're really designing together and we're producing solutions that work for all of us. And we bring in our perspective as young people who are living and working and trying to survive through these systems with people who have been working and living and surviving through these systems for years. And I think bringing them together is a really special way to design and to think about not just harm and punishment culture, but really to think about the solutions and how do we redesign and rethink and reorganize some of these systems so that they work for us.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. And like one key thing I want to add to that, which you definitely said within your response, it builds trust as well. I remember when I first came to IBJ, one of my first IBJ podcasts I was on was with Michelle or with Miss Carol Mitchell and Morgan. And we were talking about the Tacoma for All bill. And with that bill, I was asked a question by Miss Carol, why aren't young people voting, right? And I'm not all young people, but I'm definitely a part of it, right? And I also am from Tacoma. I went to Lincoln High School and Giorgione Middle School. And I know the number one thing that I've seen over and over again, whether we're talking about voting locally, or whether we're talking about going to college, right? It's two things. It's a feeling of hopelessness, I feel like. It's different depending on what we're talking about, but I know a lot of young people are like, what real impact do I have with my vote? And I remember also when we were launching the ACES event, at our ACES launch event, Threat Brown was told me and asked the question or brought up the fact of like the older people or the old people in his words have the wisdom and the young people have the energy, but why don't they want to work together? And I feel like there's just a huge disconnect in the trust and the wisdom. And I feel like one beautiful thing we get to do at the Freedom Summer Symposium, where we put both the groups of people together, and the younger groups able to see that, like, oh, okay, we can make a transformative plan, and these older people who have the wisdom and the access can enable us to make it happen at the same time. And I feel like we see, and we need that trust barrier, not just for what we're doing right now, but for any future ventures, because I know people my age genuinely feel like their vote doesn't matter, or they genuinely feel like, I could try to go to college, but I'm not supposed to be there. Like, there's this always running theme of like that stigma, that internalized stigma, from larger societal systems over time, beating into Black people's heads and Black children's heads that, like, you're not supposed to do anything. The best thing is to move away. But really, I feel like we're pushing people of the youth to really lean in and let them know that we do have power within these situations. And when we're talking about prison abolitionment, or when we're talking about the question we mentioned earlier, which is how do we keep people who do end up in the incarceration system a part of the community? We can make that happen. But we have to believe we can make that happen, and we have to come together as a community, whether that be old and young, people with access, people who have more life experience than access. And I'm just really excited to see what we make of this. It's been really cool to have this ACES team together. It's been really amazing to have Andre Jimenez here with us, co-creating something really special. So before we hop off with anything, I want to ask you, is there anything else you would like to talk about or share in terms of what you're excited about, what you have going on in your personal life, just anything you want to share before we get off this call?
No, I really appreciate this conversation. Like I said, I keep coming back to IBJ for several reasons. One, Carol Mitchell. She's been an amazing mentor in my life. She's the person that I know that I can pick up the phone at any time, anywhere I am in the world, and that she's going to answer, and she's going to give me sound advice, and that I will find somebody who cares and who understands what I'm going through on the other end of the line. And I think that sentiment and that spirit is really what kind of reverberates through everything that IBJ touches, and especially from the Freedom Summer Symposium. I tell this story often that I was a junior in undergrad, not really knowing what I wanted to do, where I fit in the world. And I had the opportunity to be a part of the leadership cohort, I believe is what they called it, which is now ACES with IBJ. And it was something so simple, but Carol just asked us, if you could change anything about your community, what would you change? And she said, don't think about money, don't think about power, don't think about politics, don't think about policy. Just if you could snap your fingers, if you had a magic wand, what would you change? And I think that like really opened up my mind to thinking, and really not relying on some of these systems or elected officials. And as you were saying, voting, I think that's oftentimes why young people don't vote, is they feel powerless. And I think for me, IBJ gave me the power to dream, to think, and then to go and do. And I think that in no other setting has a group of young people, especially young people of color, young Black people, been able in such a profound way to be able to see an issue, to spend time thinking of a solution, and then to actually see that solution come to life. My team was, we were it was in 2021, a year after George Floyd, a year into the pandemic. And I think a lot of us were feeling powerless, like you just put voice to, Isaiah. And I was working on a couple of political campaigns at the time, and just recognizing that I had a lot of knowledge gaps. There were things that I didn't know that I felt like other people my age, specifically white people that I was working with on these campaigns, just knew, whether it was from their family, from their network, from their college experiences, that just me and my comrades and the people that I was close to just didn't have access to. And so our design challenge, I was mentioning before we jumped on this call, like we were up until 1, 2 a.m. the night before we had to present it to our elders the next day, thinking of like, how do we create a leadership model where we can take the wisdom that we have, combine it with the energy that you just talked about, Isaiah, and actually put things out into the world. And we were talking about how we can start to kind of demystify some of these systems, whether it's politics, policy, law, justice, all of these systems, take the wisdom with people who have been working in these systems and break it down and bring it down to young people. And that's what ACEs became. Or I think about chimes. That was another idea that came from my cohort. Another team was thinking about how can we disrupt some of these systems. And that's how Chimes was born, another amazing IBJ program. And so I think there's no other institute, think tank, nonprofit that I've experienced where you have young people in the driver's seat and you have elders like Carol Mitchell and like so many of the other people that are going to be speaking at Freedom Summer Symposium in the passenger seat, helping you drive that car to success. And so that's why I keep coming back. I think that's why having a visionary and a luminary like Michelle Alexander there to guide the conversations, as well as the many other speakers, all in the same room with young people and elders, thinking and designing these systems, magic has to come from that space. And so I'm so excited for the Freedom Summer Symposium, and I hope that people listening will come and enjoy this experience and work alongside us at the Freedom Summer Symposium.
Wow. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andre, for coming on today. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. We got to echo that. If you had a magic wand, what would you change? Don't worry about money. Don't worry about circumstance, larger societal systems, or anything in front of you today. What would you change? That's the key question I want everybody to take home with, because that's how we build what we need. Not only what we need, but what we want as well, because we deserve our wants. Our wants are not too much, and our wants are just as important as our needs in these situations. Um, yeah. Because we can't just function out of survival. Like desire has a place in this as well. And so I love how you put it, Andre. And thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Please come out for the Freedom Summer Symposium, June 22nd. Come see the amazing hosts and panelists. Come see Michelle Alexander, a generational person with a generational book and a generational spirit. And just be part of the co-creation, be a thought partner, and be part of the change as well. Everybody stay you, stay real, stay blessed. IBJ out. See you next week.